talk to me a little bit about, well, actually, let me just ask you this. Why did you start running?
Oh, why did I start running? Because when I was dating my wife, she's much more health conscious than I am. And she made me promise that as part of, us coming together, that a 5K would happen at some point for me. So she cashed that chip in like 2 years ago. So that's when I started to run. And it took me about 1.5 years to enjoy it. I hated it up until last year. And now I've run so much that I've hurt myself, so I'm on a pause for a minute, but I'm anxious to get back.
Really?
Because we're doing a big run in the fall that'll benefit Living Water Ministries.
So you said that it took you a while before you started to enjoy. What was the trigger?
The trigger to like it?
To like it, yeah.
Last summer I realized I could run in a way that if I focused on being able to breathe while I ran and not being worried about time. So for the first 1.5 years, it was like, I got to beat my last time, I got to do better, I got to go faster. And I'd just be like dying, And last summer, something just clicked, and I'm like, I'm just going to run in a way that I can breathe during it, and that was way better. Yeah. And I wanted to add distance, so I knew I couldn't just go hardcore, fast for a long distance. So
what's the furthest you've run, or?
The longest I ran was last fall. I ran a little over 10.5 miles, one time. I've only hit double digits the one time. Before I injured myself last fall, my regular was 6.5 miles 3 times a week. It starts to take a lot of time. Like, the amount of time you're running is prohibitive to a productive day.
What, do you listen to anything?
I listen to, I got playlists, and I rock headphones and go. And it's not like that 10.5 mile run. I downloaded a comedian's album because I just needed stories or something, which is fun because then when you're out of breath, you're trying not to crack up.
Yeah, I don't have the breath for this.
Yeah, I do.
So you're also a big comic book guy.
I am a big comic book guy. I am. I was very much in high school and into college, and I stay connected with a few graphic novels here and there, and now with everybody else with movies.
Right.
So it's sort of like to have been a comic book guy and to have all these movies is a dream come true.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's like seeing these 2-dimensional players in 3-dimensional space, and you're like, this is wild.
Yeah.
This is but you named your son after one.
I did.
Is he your favorite character?
Wolverine was my favorite character, so I did not name my son Wolverine, but his name is Logan. But and I just was preaching in the church in Portage on Sunday and mentioned this, but his name has other meanings too. His middle name and everything, his initials are all kind of family related. But I loved Wolverine. That was the book I read pretty aggressively as a high school kid.
Why that character?
I like Wolverine because he's gritty. The comic book Wolverine is pretty dark. He I don't know, it makes me sound like a bad person, Paul. He was willing to go to the extremes necessary to get the work done. So that meant for him he was a killer, and the tension between hero and villain and those kind of stories. That's why I like a lot of you watch Walking Dead, you're always wondering is Rick Grimes actually a good guy? I'm not sure anymore, and same with Wolverine, he was a good guy and yet pretty violent at the same time. So I don't know, something about that. He was small, the comic book Wolverine's a short, hairy dude. The movie Wolverine's a tall guy that's
this Hugh
super handsome, or whatever. So in that, it's this runty person that's been made invulnerable by this metal on his bones, that's got claws in his hands, that heals and basically doesn't age. I used to love werewolf stuff and vampire stuff and just the idea of all those things the fantasy stuff as a kid, just thinking about that. So I don't know, I like Wolverine.
Well, I think that the anti-hero thing is...
Yeah, the anti-hero thing, that's the word.
Is key because it makes him a little more human because...
I guess.
You have to... Well, we're not going to go into this Logan Wolverine diatribe.
We could, though.
We could. This would be an extra hour long. Yeah, look for it in the extra scenes.
That's right.
The deleted scenes.
The deleted scenes.
Yes. You're a graphic designer by
education.
By education.
And job experience for the most part.
Mm-hmm. So. Was this a segue, the comic book end of it?
No. I was a drawer too as a kid, and so I learned to draw by looking at comic books and redrawing frames. And so I remember doing that with some classic X-Men. Like I could probably dig through my comics and find the one I spent a lot of time on. So that was kind of how I learned to draw superhero-y kinds of things. But graphic design came about. I was always involved in art. My mom's a fiber artist and a jewelry artist and was part of a community in the Kalamazoo area, so I was always around artists. And I took clay classes on Saturdays for most of my young life. And so then when I went to college, I actually was also a very big fan of math and science in high school. So I thought I was going to be a mechanical engineer and ended up starting in the physics department at Valpo. And I was a physics major for 3 years and eventually just burnt out on the math. The super advanced math that starts to come in towards the end. I was like, yep, brain broke. So I'd been taking some art classes as my electives and enjoying those. So I thought, well, I want to get a degree that's employable, but I can do so. I switched to art and emphasized in graphic design.
That's kind of interesting because your career has taken another crazy turn into camping ministry.
Yeah, basically managing a nonprofit. I bring this up all the time. I have a Bachelor of Arts in art, a minor in physics, and I run a nonprofit. So you draw those lines and try and make those dots connect, So it's just about following passion. So I was a camper and I was a summer staffer at camp and just decided that's something I want to do with my life. So really pretty passionately pursued trying to get a position, especially here in Michigan at Stony Lake. And that came about in 2005. And kind of the rest is history. So in 2010 became executive director. As a camper, it was a place that I felt like was a powerful place for me to experience God and experience friends and experience a place where I could be myself. And then in college to be a counselor and to hear from children about what they're processing about life and where their faith intersects with that was really powerful for me. And I thought that seems worth doing for the rest of my life potentially. So here we are.
What do you see as the biggest shift from when you were a camper to today?
Everything. I think the way the whole world is set up, the things that compete for a kid's time, the way a family is scheduled, all of that makes camp a little harder to fit into life. I think the world, we were talking, the world that we live in today with school shootings and drama in the news all the time, and I think that requires this youngest generation to be raised with a little less childhood. And so kids both they're always kids, and so you always see that oh, there you are, you're just a little kid. But there are sometimes where they just floor you with their maturity and their insights on things. And so I think what's different is this generation's readiness to tackle big issues and to really dig in on where faith and life intersect and what this has to do with my life and where's the relevancy in all of this for me. And so I think that's changed how we deliver program and the kind of community that we form in what we do. Certainly too, just the regulation on camping has intensified a lot since I was a camper, and so it's a much safer place to be these days too because of all that. I look back to when I was a counselor and think, that we didn't have the concern for the rules that we do now, so it's really changed quite a bit for the better.
You just mentioned the structure the family puts themselves in.
Yeah.
All the different options and this and that. How do you get families to approach what you're doing at camp to fit that in? What are you doing?
It's a struggle. Generally, families that have the means to make choices for their kids in the summer choose things like sports, generally. Sports camps, music camps, those kinds of things, or programs related to that, or vacation. And so it's the families that maybe don't have the financial means that have the willingness to have their kids participate. So what we're doing is really amplifying our outreach to populations that can't financially afford the experience. And so we went from a model about 3 years ago of $10,000 a year in scholarship awards to $50,000 a year in scholarship awards. And so in the last 3 summers, we've given away over $111,000 in camp scholarships. So it's a different kind of approach to reach, to both serve the constituency we serve, which is the church, but also to reach a whole new demographic of people pretty boldly. So that's what we're doing to deal with that, because it's really hard to convince the parent in this day and age that church camp is the thing that they should prioritize. It is, I believe firmly that it is, but it's in the face of all the other shinier things. It's a harder sell sometimes.
And speaking of shinier things, there's some quote unquote church camps that offer some shinier things.
There
What differentiates you from, that type of camp?
Well, one, we're trying to add shinier things here and there just because that's part of the business. So that might be like, our trampoline water blob thing, or the brand new high ropes course, which we're adding on to this year, or, bringing in archery back into the camp experience. Those kinds of things we're always looking at. But what we've always done well, I think what our niche is relationships, like deep relationships. And because we also, outside of camp, run hotel-based events for junior high and senior high kids, we have multiple points of contact throughout the year, and our staff are very involved then in getting to know their campers and seeing them again and being on a continuum with them that I think cultivates deeper, longer-lasting relationships in this whole faith formation context. And I think those are really meaningful to our constituency. We see evidence of that. I think one of the pieces that shows that is a lot of our peer camps, even in the Lutheran and Episcopal Church, they really struggle to get staff year to year in other states. But we don't do any staffing fairs. We don't do any of that. Our staff primarily come up either through some intentional recruitment that we do outside of those kinds of fairs, or just former campers. Former campers coming up that have been through our leadership programs, that we've had those multiple points of contact with, that want to come make a difference in this setting. So I think that's our niche, relationships.
And I've witnessed it for multiple years, how the staff tends to be part of that cycle. I know that you said that they come up through the camp ranks. However, there's got to be some type of hook. What do you think your hook is? To keep them in this cycle.
I think our hook these days, because I see our summer staff, I've been doing this for 12 years. I think the way our summer staff engage working at camp and how they feel about it, what they think about it, has evolved. And it's especially evolved, I think, in these last 3 to 5 years as our programs have also evolved. And so our summer staff are typically of that millennial, early Generation Z generation that really values impact and relevancy. And so when they see our programs and they hear us articulate our mission and our vision for what we do, they see it play out in the programs we offer. They see it in our week for children in foster care, or our week for families that are homeless, or our week for adults with developmental disabilities, or our week of camp that is raising leaders and fighting racism, or our multicultural week of camp we do in partnership with another organization. There's continuity there for them. They say, you say you're about this, and then you do it. And then we say, and you're in charge of it. So you help plan how this happens. I'm like the old guy in the corner office that people don't talk to hardly ever. They're really the ones implementing and creating the program around all these things. They get to be involved, they get to be decision makers, they get to be part of that change and impact happening, and it's pretty powerful to watch. And so I think that's part of it too, is that word of mouth and our existing staff saying, this is a place where things are real and authentic and really happening, and there's impact being had.
You just mentioned something that seems to be a hot button topic out there in the workforce, and that's the term millennial.
Sure.
What is your take on the millennials? It sounds pretty positive.
I love the millennials. I just went to a conference last week and attended a seminar on generational theory, so talking about baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Generation Z, and how that specifically plays into Christian camping. But millennials very much want to have that impact. That's my experience. That's what this seminar affirmed for me. They're very focused on having impact, and that's huge for them. So if they feel like they can have impact, and if they get leadership roles in making that impact happen, they are a force to be reckoned with that is pretty impressive. In fact, in that seminar, one of the interesting things that I believe to be true is that the theory is that millennials will leapfrog Gen Xers for positions of power that baby boomers are going to be vacating, and continuing to vacate. And I'm excited about that because I think it means stuff's going to get done.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. One of the aspects of what you're doing within the camping ministry and your what you're doing in the outreach is the anti-racism work.
Yep.
I know that's been a big part of what you've been doing lately. Could you talk a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah. So this happens specifically around a program we do called Bridge Builders, which is a program for high school kids that is now attended by kids from all over the country. It's usually a cohort of around 30 to 35 kids, both white and people of color, from a variety of backgrounds often. And so that's a camp week where we do On the leadership side, we're really focusing on peer ministry training, which is something we've done for a long time. But listening skills, evaluation of your own personal gifts, and how you implement those gifts as a leader, and gifts assessment and all that, and how to engage very meaningful, deep listening kind of conversations. Married to that then is a curriculum that educates about the realities of racism in our country today, the history of it, how it plays out now. We explore the definition of racism. We do explore white privilege, all of these things. And that marriage of listening and gifts assessment and leadership ability married with that is part of a formula that we believe gives these kids at least the beginning of some tools with which they can work to dismantle this stuff from the inside out as they continue to go on their life journey and be put in positions of power where they may have influence over situations and rules that has systemically kind of brought this about. And so we do this work as a Christian organization because Jesus tells us to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so it's a marriage of what it means to be a person of faith and what it means to be a citizen in this world, and how we bring the kingdom of God into this place in this time, and close some of those gaps. That's something we're pretty passionate about, yeah. So
what are you striving to learn more?
What am I striving to learn more? Personally, so for me, again, I'm a Bachelor of Arts in art, minor in physics, leader of a nonprofit. I've been learning ever since I said yes to being executive director. And right now, a lot of my learning and growing edges are in the fundraising realm. I'm trying to figure out how to be better at that, be more thorough with that, how to work those channels, increase our staff maybe so that we can pursue that more boldly, because we're doing awesome, compelling things, and now we really need to rally our base to support and push us forward.
And what do you want your legacy to be?
I wrestle with that, because certainly I think it's a natural thing to imagine what that might be. I think what my legacy will be, or other people will judge it to be, is that I was able to lead us through some difficult things into a mode where we were in survival mode, into a mode where we were able to be proactive and really tackle some serious issues, like how do we deal with racism as people of faith, and how do we deal with a church that claims to want to be diverse but can't achieve it. And so we've done a lot of work where we've created a community now that is consistently almost diverse as the country is, in a church that is very much not that diverse. And so I think people will judge my legacy to be about that, about how we brought people together that weren't being brought together in our context almost anywhere else to the degree we did.